Yesterday, Kara and I were out running errands, and we got caught in the rain. Imagine that. And it was raining when we were walking into the store, and the sky, we noticed it as we were driving out. The sky was overcast, it was gloomy, and I feel like the skies have been overcast and gloomy since August. Right? But when we came out and when we were driving, all of a sudden it seemed as if the clouds rolled back and the sun broke forth and started to shine. It just broke out, so much so that I had to move my visor down because the brightness was there, and I wanted to pull over, and I just wanted to get out and dance in the sunshine. Okay, maybe not dance, but I just wanted to soak up that sun. It was breaking forth and busting forth this great and wonderful light. And today the sun is shining. Today is Epiphany. It is that moment we celebrate the awe of God. God reveals God's self. God is breaking forth and shining through all of the darkness and difficulty and hardships, and God is shining goodness. Today I ask those who were setting the table to leave the Christmas paraments out because it's the star. Even though we have a covering for communion, I wanted us to see the star, the light. Because Epiphany is the remembering and the celebration of, yes, the wise men, or the three kings, or the magi who come and who understand God is doing something. They follow a star. The heavens light up, a bright, shining light to point to the light of the world. Epiphany, the day of revelation, aha moment for us, knowing God is come. God is come not just for the select few, not just for the insiders, but for the world. This news is for the entire world. And as we look at the passages for Epiphany, we begin to sense and feel what this means. And there's some messages here that are important for us. I think we see it both with the gospel reading and the epistle for today, the working of God and the light of the world. First, I think what we see is that this moment begins with outsiders. Not those who are in the midst and on the inside, the privileged, but this message comes to those who are far off, to the wise men, to the magi. And here's the thing. When we look at these guys that we read about in Matthew's Gospel, the 2nd chapter, there's a lot of mystery here. We don't really know who these men are. They've been called kings, 3 kings. They've been called wise men. They've been called magi. But we really don't know much about who they are. Now, tradition has added stories and lore to it. It's given them names, but that's made up. From the text, we know very, very little. There's a mystery. We don't even know exactly where they come from. We just know that they came from far away. They're not a part of the inner circle. They're not a part of the inside. They're outside. And get this. It's the outsiders who see the star and who realize that God is doing something. It's the outsiders who travel and say, we've got to go see this that's happening. The heavens are showing us that God is doing something. And they traveled all the way to Jerusalem. And when they get to Jerusalem, they say, hey, we're trying to find this child that is born King of the Jews. And those who were established, those who are in the inner circle of the people of God, don't even know about it. This is news to them. Those on the outside see it first. Those on the outside are drawn in to see what God is doing. We even get a sense of this in the life of the Apostle Paul. Now, Paul, when he began, was very much an insider in the Jewish faith. He was, he was a zealot. He was dedicated. He was strict, a Pharisee, perfect in all of this. But when it comes to what God has been doing with the church and with Jesus, he very much is the enemy. He was the enemy of the church, persecuting the church. And yet, Paul has his own epiphany moment, the moment when the light of God bursts forth for him while he's traveling to persecute the church. And that light of God knocks him down, and it causes him to be blind to see the physical world so he could know the truth of Christ, so he could see. And Paul says in the passage today, he reiterates that I have been called to be an apostle to the Gentiles, to the outside. This message, this moment, this breaking forth of freedom, of truth, of salvation is not contained to the inner circle. It is breaking forth to the entire world. The establishment, those on the inside, don't even notice it. And they have to rely on what those on the outside have seen. And, look, when it comes to Christian faith, nobody's more of an insider than I am. Not because I'm better than anybody, but I'm a pastor in a Protestant church in America. I mean, this is how I make my living. I'm on the inside, and as on the inside of this, I'm telling you it's the outsiders who inform those who have perhaps this ability to help the insiders see more of what God is doing at times. This light, this epiphany is for the world. God is doing something new and different and good. If you were on the outside, that's okay. Because God is revealing His goodness to you too, if you will see it. We pick up something else in a passage, in both of these passages. We begin with the wise men who were traveling to Jerusalem, and they ask where this child is going to be born. Herod picks up on this, and he is interested to know about this too, since he is the king of the Jews. He would like to know where this child who is the king of the Jews is born. And he looks for this and is trying to find this out. And the wise men receive, by the way, information from the insiders. They did have to hear from the chief priest about the prophecy, where this child is going to be born. And they go to Bethlehem, and the star points out the place. And as the star is shining over the home where Jesus is, they are filled with joy. There is this incredible joy that breaks forth because they understand the power of this moment. They are going to see something incredible. And they go in, filled with joy. But we begin to pick up on some things that Matthew is laying out here. There is this sense of joy, but there is also trouble brewing. Because, Herod wants to know where the child is born because he wants to eliminate any competition. And what we know if we read further in Matthew is how drastic Herod will be. Herod will kill every child who is 2 years and younger to get rid of this light that is come. So what we begin to see is that, yes, Epiphany, this great flash, this incredible moment comes, but when God starts to stand up, when God starts to bring good news, when God is saving and redeeming the world, it stirs trouble for those that are in charge, for those who hold power, and people who are in power and privilege are not easily going to let go of it. They will kill children to keep their power. So in the midst of Epiphany, this great moment, we see that when God works in the world, the powers and principalities and others start to react with trouble. We see it with Paul too. Paul's writing here says, the first verse, "This is the reason that I, Paul, am a prisoner for Christ Jesus for the sake of Gentiles." He is in prison. Why is he in prison? Has he stolen something? Has he killed someone? Has he committed some terrible crime? No, he's proclaiming the gospel. He is stirring up things. He is bearing the light, and that is causing problems for the establishment, trouble, and they throw him in jail. So if we are going to stand in this light, if we are to understand the good news, the power of this, we also need to realize that when we act in good news, in the goodness of God's light, there may be trouble. Because when God does something good, it challenges authority, people that have a hold of things. And they're not going to let it go. Trouble. Don't be surprised by it. Know it's coming. If you're doing good, there may be trouble coming. But don't be afraid. What we also see is that even though there is this terrible trouble, the light of God is able to work around it and through it and overcome it. Yes, Herod wants to destroy this child, but the Spirit of God speaks to Joseph in a dream and says, you got to get out of town. The child is in danger. And Joseph takes Mary, and he takes the child, and they go to Egypt, and the child survives. And the Apostle Paul is in jail. He's been locked up for doing good. But even in the jail, he is still proclaiming the gospel. He is writing epistles. He is spreading the word to people. And he won't be in jail forever. So, when God does something great, something powerful, something moving, there is joy in it. But no, there's trouble stirring. There's trouble there. But don't be afraid. God overcomes the trouble. Georgia Representative John Lewis said that when he was young, when he was coming of age, it was during the civil rights movement, and he often talked to his mother about how he was bothered by the Jim Crow laws of the South and how it limited what he could do, and he wanted to do something. He wanted to join the movement, and his mother would often tell him, don't go stirring things up, don't go getting into trouble. But he did. He marched with Cain. He had his skull cracked. But he comes to say, what we need to do is to get into good trouble. In 2016, he told the graduating class, go make good trouble. Don't be afraid to do what's good because trouble stirs. We need to get into what is good. We need to do God's good work because the light is seeking to free and change and to make this world how God intended it to be. And that might be trouble for some people, but God is going to overcome it. God's light is breaking forth. Yeah, there's trouble, but don't be afraid. And if we are looking at this, if we are looking at this moment of epiphany, and if we are celebrating it, we must also come to realize that if this is a great and good moment, then we are called to join it. That as the church, we have more of a job to do than just celebrate it and just stand in awe of it, then we need to join it. And Paul says in that 10th verse, so that through the church, the wisdom of God and its rich variety might now be made known to the rulers and authorities in heavenly places, that there is a work here for the church, that we are to be the ones bearing the light, carrying the light, shining the light in the high places, in the mighty places, and in the places so people can see. And so how do we become bearers of light? Well, we don't need to be afraid, though we should be aware. And I think we just hold on to the light that is Christ. Follow Jesus. Live like Jesus lives in a bold way. And here's the thing that sometimes the church, I think, mixes up and struggles with, and I'm pointing to myself. Sometimes we think our job is to defend the light. We got to defend it. We've got to protect it. We're trying to defend the light instead of just letting it shine. Sometimes we feel like we've got to protect it, and if we're not too careful, if we don't watch out, we will protect the light by putting a bushel basket over it so that no one can see it shine. And I think some of the dangers is that we try to over-explain the light. We try to, through intellectual argument, explain the gospel. And I like to do that, to be quite honest with you. But I'm not so sure that's exactly how we let the light shine. I think we just go. I think we just become present. We make Christ our all in all, and we try to live how Christ lives, and that means we show up. We show up for people. You know, the last couple of weeks have been kind of quiet with the holidays at church. And I've had an opportunity to really focus prayer for you. And I've become aware, and just really emphasizing this, a lot of the struggles that a lot of you are going through. Right here, we don't have to go far. There's a need of light right here. Some of you are dealing with some very scary things with family members. You are anticipating what the doctors are going to say and see and find. and it's very scary. And some of you are trying to get better after long, long illnesses. Look at our friend Fred. Fred had his apartment catch fire, and he's lost everything. And listen, it's not just material things. This was the place where he and his wife lived, and everything that reminded him of his wife is gone. And that's terrible. And you share about families from other fires that have lost life and struggles. Some of you are wondering when you're going to go back to work, or if it's going to affect you, or when it's going to affect you. And what we need to do is, as a church, we need to show up for each other. We need to say, I don't know that I can solve this. I don't know that I can change this. I don't know that, that I can myself be any help, but I'm going to rally around you. I am going to carry this with you. I'm going to let the light of Christ shine. You are not going to go through this trouble alone. I'm going to lift up. We are going to lift up these prayer concerns, these scary things, these difficult moments. We're going to lift them up, and we're going to say to you, you don't have to carry this alone. We're rallying behind you. This woman that called me out of the blue, I said to her, don't worry about what the pastor does. Find a church where the people will know you and invest in you and rally around you. And you guys do that. We might not always be perfect, but we do it. And that is light. That is bearing the light of Christ. Let's keep doing it. And let's see how the many ways we need to do it. Let's keep on. And if there is so much right here, there is certainly folks who need it out there. And there are people in our family that need the light to shine. There are people in our neighborhoods that need the light to shine. Let's just go be present and know that the light of Christ is with us. Let's go shine in the darkness. And if we need to challenge things, let's not be afraid. The 19th century author Robert Louis Stevenson shared a story about his childhood. He was sitting in his home in the sitting room in the front, and he was looking out the window with his face pressed against the glass because he was mesmerized by what he was watching. And what he was watching was the street lamp lighter. This man, whose job it was to take a ladder, climb up the ladder, and light the street lights, the gas lights. And he would watch the man climb up the ladder, and boom, there was light. And he'd come back down, and he'd walk to the next lamp, climb up it, pow, there's light, and go back down. And he was mesmerized by this bringing of light. And his father comes in, and he sees him pressed against the window, and he says, son, what are you staring at so intently? What do you see? And the young Stevenson says, I'm watching this man knock holes in the darkness. Knock holes in the darkness. That's what Christ has come to do. And as a church, that's our job. There's a lot of shadows, there's a lot of valleys, alleyways. There's some darkness. Let's go bring the light. The light comes to outsiders, so it can come to us. The light, when it shines, can bring trouble. Don't be afraid of it. And our job is to go knock holes in the darkness. Because of Christ, we can do it. Let's be faithful. Amen.